Hello and welcome to Film Companion South. This is the first episode of AskBR in 2021. It is on Master, obviously, and stay tuned to our social media handles to know which three questions are winning the prizes from Fully Filmy, the coolest pop culture store in South India. The first question comes from Vignesh Subramaniam, who says, why can't directors make a mass movie like Thalapathy where you have a perfect balance of stardom and director's signature? Interesting question, but first thing, I don't think Thalapathy is a mass movie as such because at that time, that is, you're talking about the late 80s, I don't think the mass movie as we know today existed then, even though Rajinikanth was acting in, so they were basically little explosive masala movies, but today's this whole, this entry and this and that and all that started in the 90s more likely. So I would say Thalapathy is more Rajinikanth acting in a drama kind of movie than like a mix of sensibilities like you're seeing in Master, which is basically Lokesh trying to retain his identity as a director while also making a mass movie with a big mass star. So that's the difference. But that said, I think Master is easily the most interesting Vijay movie in a long time, probably ever, simply because okay, so the entertainment consideration aside, right? When there are those who see movies just for entertainment, and you guys are not going to be watching AskBR, right? But then the ones that take movies very seriously, maybe perhaps a little too seriously, maybe we guys, for us, what's really interesting is this question: can a big director with a unique style and signature, and who's known as a big director, work with a big star and kind of attain some kind of fusion of sensibilities? And I think Master is a very important step in that direction. Yes, the movie is not perfect, but it does amazing things with the star signature. So the question is, will this make other actors, other mass actors take on these things, such projects where they don't have a proper fight till the last scene, where they don't actually have an interest in the heroine, and the heroine is kind of just has this one slight song where she shows some interest in him, whether these things will become popular, whether the actor will play a loser who cannot, who's drunk for a lot of the first half, that, and then redeems himself by transforming into a tiger or whatever. Now those things are very, very important things in Master. I'll tell you one more thing. Now I'm not going back to the early days of Tamil cinema, right? Because I mean, let's leave that. Let's just start with the MGR Shivaji Ganeshan era, which is when these two poles of one actorly star and one mass star came about, right? So that when Sridhar, one of the most stylistically different and major directors of his time, he'd made Kadalika Neramillai, he'd made Ninjal Oralayam, all these kinds of things, right? Look at the difference he brings to a Shivaji starrer like Sivandaman and an MGR starrer like Urimai Kural. Sivandaman is still trying to, I'm not saying it's a fully successful film, but there is still a lot going on in terms of stylistic experimentation and things like that. Urimai Kural is basically just an MGR movie. You remove the name Sridhar from the film and you'll be like surprised to know that this guy did it. Because, I mean, I don't know what went on. Were his hands tied? Was he asked to do a particular kind of movie? I don't know like what details, but that Sridharism isn't there in Urimai Kural at all. The first time I think we saw a director insert himself so much into a big stars movie is Thalapathy, which is like now you're having a thing like Rajnikant begins with a fight, which is typical, but the fight is for a reason which will eventually unite him with the woman who is about to marry, but that woman is not the woman he actually loves. So you're looking at the kind of movie in Thalapathy where Rajnikant actually loses his girlfriend to the America Mappala. I mean, that was earth-shattering for 1989, right? Or I forget the exact year, 90. So when you're looking at that kind of a thing, you are still looking at a very, very big transformation and a fusion of these two sensibilities. Now, but yet, why isn't Thalapathy like exactly like Master? Why is it not the same thing? Because at that time, this Master, FDFS, all these things didn't exist at all, right? There's this show of young kids coming at like 3 a.m. crackers, this that didn't exist to this extent, where your people are fighting on Twitter about which star is bigger and this and that. It was released normal 4 shows. 12 o'clock, 3 o'clock, 6 o'clock, whatever. There was no FDFS, no, because that concept itself, this kind of stardom, that concept did not exist. Even though Rajinikanth is a huge star, this kind of stardom concept didn't exist then. So Mani Ratnam had a relatively easier time molding Rajinikanth to his vision than Lokesh Kanagaraj would have had molding Vijay to his vision, because Vijay's stardom, I'm not saying who's the bigger star, but I'm saying stardom of today is a very different animal from when Rajinikanth was in his 40s, 50s, and that kind of a star. So I would say that this is not exactly a right comparison, and that Master is a unique beast that must be seen through just this lens, as the first film that has tried to do something very, very different with the mass formula. And when I say very, very different, I'm not saying, it transforms Vijay completely. You're still talking about a fairly templated kind of movie. But what really, really is important here is that there are no artificial highs. There are no suddenly, oh, inga lag agudappa, let's bring a song inside. There's no comedy track except for the very comedy track that Vijay himself gives as his life story by quoting other films. So you're having all these things, and even the dance, when it happens, it's like the first time the dance happens is to rouse an alcoholic master. The Vati coming. So these are all very, very small, significant, important things. And for me, the real question is whether these will lead to better mass movies, right? Because as much as we love, the artistic films, speaking of that, I would say all of you who has an interest in cinema, go watch The Great Indian Kitchen, this wonderful Malayalam film which is streaming on this platform called Stream. But what we are really looking at is, we want the big stars to be big stars on the big screen, but at the same time we want them to have some sensibility there, some kind of a thing. Now again, if you're just saying, I just want to go whistle, I just want to go sit there and enjoy the duets and the this and the that, then fine, that's your thing, right? But I'm just talking about some of us who want more from the big stars than just a series of formulaic things. Now again, I'm not saying that I personally will not enjoy that. If it's done well, it's done well. But what can an auteur, it's too soon to label Lokesh Kanagaraj an auteur, but what can someone who genuinely wants to have a vision or has a vision, what can he bring to the table, and will future stars follow? I think that's the most important question that Master lays down, and I think that's what's going to be very interesting to follow. Now, Karuna Rajamanikam asks, I understand we need a powerful villain, but the issue with the hero playing villain, as it takes time to establish him as an evil guy, do you feel if he had cast an unknown villain, then the movie would have been shorter and better? I'm not sure about whether casting an unknown guy, because I'm sick of bringing these unknown North Indians like Vivek Oberoi and Neil Nitin Mukesh and making them, or Ronit Roy in this recent horror show called Bhumi. I'm sick of bringing them, and because they are so not rooted, right? So right off the bat that they're going to get kicked off the planet. Okay, so here also that Vijay Sethupathi is going to die, or at least he's going to go to prison, right? Whatever, because good has to win over evil. But what Vijay Sethupathi brings to the table is that I have cast Vijay Sethupathi, so I have to write a strong thing for him, as opposed to him just coming every 5 seconds in a suit coat and gnashing his teeth and saying, I'll kill you, or something like that. That's ridiculous. So what Vijay Sethupathi brings to the table is the intention that this is no random guy. This is not a guy, because you look at it there, you have to have two evenly matched characters. Now again, that's very, very unusual in a big star film, because if you look at Thalapathy, again, if you want to compare that, Rajinikanth's enemy is his brother. So again, that goes into drama territory. Whereas here, the enemy is a guy who has similar traits as Vijay. Vijay has his arm strength in his kada, then Vijay Sethupathi has his arm strength in his fist. So, I mean, I could go on listening. There are many things in this movie. There are many parallels in this movie. But what I'm saying is that this is what is needed. I think, you have, a big star playing against another big star as the hero and villain, and hopefully this will also mean that Tamil cinema can afford multi-starrers again. I'm not again talking about something like Ponniyin Selvan, which is a prestige project, but in a mass movie, how nice it would be to have like a number of stars together, playing against each other, bringing their own different signatures into the movie. Right now, nobody wants to because they're all scared. Oh my God, I'll get overshadowed by this actor. Will I get more scenes and all these things? But a Vijay is saying that I know that Vijay Sethupathi is an actor, because Vijay knows that he's not the actor that Vijay Sethupathi is, but he's letting him come onto the role and saying, I'll handle the mass and I'll handle the Kuti story and I'll handle all this other stuff, and Vijay Sethupathi can be the antagonist. And if this creates a bit of an imbalance, I still think it's not such a bad thing, because you are still watching the birth of something. That's what's really, really important for me in Master, is that it gives hope, that this beast called the mass movie can actually be tamed, and it can actually be brought into control with a directorial sensibility. Even though this particular movie isn't perfect, maybe, you slowly keep trying, and maybe one day we will reach a position where, a mass movie like Thalapathy can be made, as opposed to a drama like Thalapathy. Vinay Teja Reddy has another question about Vijay Sethupathi. He says, I think the reason Vijay Sethupathi is getting such solid appreciation for the film is because the setting of the film Juvenile Centers is unfolded through his character. Master enters the setting halfway through the film, so in that way, is it Vijay Sethupathi's film? No, not at all. Because what you're doing is you're establishing the villain first, and then you're establishing the hero. Even in the Mahabharata, if you look at the Bhagavata Puranam, which is the Krishna story, Kamsa is introduced first, and then Krishna is born. So it's not something that Lokesh himself has think. This is the reason I love the Masala movie is because it is our own thing. It is the Indian thing that is taken from the myths, right? The beats, the emotional beats are all derived from our myths to a large extent, which is why, you can make an action thriller, a good action thriller in Tamil or whatever, but that's still a Western kind of a thing. Masala is an Indian thing where, you go the Ramayana, the Mahabharata, and you get little, like precedents for the really good Masala movies that are happening right now. And I would say this is not a bad thing at all, that Vijay Sethupathi begins the film, because first we need to know how powerful the antagonist is, and then we get the protagonist who can tame that antagonist. And I'll tell you another thing that I really, really love about this Vijay Sethupathi character is that, Lokesh treats him in an almost Hitchcockian way, in that the audience knows that the bomb is ticking, right? That's the Hitchcock thing. The audience knows the bomb is ticking, but the hero doesn't. Similarly, the audience knows who Bhavani is, but Vijay doesn't know. Vijay's never seen him. That's again something that's unusual, because usually the protagonist and antagonist, at least by midpoint, they kind of, meet and they know what the other person looks like. They've had a few confrontations or whatever. Here, that doesn't happen. I am Vivek Manian says, by having posters like Andrea on board, Shanthanu, etc., I feel they have hyped up this film, and with a 3-hour running time, people would obviously expect some sort of role for them, but they ended up like cameos. Yeah, so this I completely agree with, because, I would have actually loved Andrea to have a bigger role in this film. And I think one of the biggest thing is that you hear about Shanthanu Bhagyaraj and you hear him doing the promos, and I mean, at least you see him doing the promos, and you think something's going to happen with that plot point, because at that point where this Gauri goes and gives him a handshake and says, "Na evening college, ni morning college," or maybe it's the other way around, you still feel that there is something that's going to be done, with these characters. But then they kind of go away, and I really feel that is something that needs to be, that's a curiosity. Why do we have these characters if they are not going to play a major role later on? Because if you look at it, Lokesh is immensely capable of writing a mass character on his own. For me, this movie does not belong to either Vijay or Vijay Sethupathi. It belongs to Undial. Oh my God, what a fantastic mass character that kid is. It's like that scene where he saves Malavika at that barber shop. I'm like, if I could do this thing, I would have done that, because it's so amazing. It's so well written. It is so beautifully, like, not just writing, but the whole thing is so beautifully done that afterwards when Vijay asks, "Hey, yarada ningala?" You are, imagine in the second half of a big hero movie, the heroine is being saved by this little boy. I'm like, who does that, right? And that's what I'm saying. This movie, beyond the Varta Ilya, is it entertaining or not? No, though, beyond those, and those people are not like our audience, right? So I mean, as in this show's audience. So this movie is so fascinating in so many ways because of all those things. You've got to look beyond for what it does with the persona of a big star, and that's what's interesting. Imtiaz Mohsen asks, now with Master being released, what could you think about the confidence Lokesh could potentially gain from his fans for his next films, especially as Kamal starrer? Not a fair comparison, no, because Kamal is senior. Kamal can play anything. Vijay can't play anything. Vijay cannot die at the end. Like Kamal can die at the end. We've accepted this fact that, one of the reasons I think, when I asked Mani Ratnam, why did, in the Mahabharata, Karna dies, right? But in Thalapathy he lives. So in the book, when I asked him why does Karna die, he said he felt sorry for him because he's already had such a tough life and abandoned by mother. Finally, he wanted to give him closure with his mother and say, okay, I'm going to let this guy stay with his mother who abandoned him, so that at least some time that he gets with his mother, it's going to be a compensation for the time he was denied of her. But I also feel that maybe another subconscious reason was that if you kill Rajinikanth at the end, that's like a major thing. You can't really do that. So when Vijay comes versus Kamal, Nayagan, Kamal dies in the end. Guna, Kamal dies in the end. Mahanadi, he loses an arm. So we've accepted Shivaji, Kamal stardom as the stars who can do anything and get away with anything. But Rajini, Vijay, that kind of stardom is not that kind of stardom. You cannot do anything. So I would say that this is not exactly a right comparison. But yes, it has, because even with a relatively inflexible star like Vijay, if you can get away with so much, then with a star who has traveled the gamut of characters and who has made us accept him in every kind of thing, and which Lokesh doesn't have to think, oh, either Panna will the audiences accept, or if I do that, will he doesn't have to think that at all. It's going to be like really, really something to see what he's got. Viswanathan Kalyan Ram asks, in my opinion, Master is for Vijay as to how Pete is for Rajinikanth. So much to cherish for. Second is the professor of Vijay named Selvam. I couldn't hear the dialogues due to the noise. I wouldn't say it's the same thing, because what Karthik Subbaraj did is create an explicit homage to Rajinikanth by having the gate opening scene from Apurva Ragangal, by having the birth scene from another movie. But so the thing is, that's not this. Even though there are references to Gilly and this and that, all these movies, this is not exactly. This still plays out like a mass movie in which you see little Vijayism sprinkled here and there from his earlier films, like a fun thing, but that is not the exact movie itself. So I would say that part of it. And as for Selvam, yes, Vijay is actually, if you go into the movie universe beyond Master, Vijay is technically the student of Kamal from Namavar. And he could not take, at the end of Namavar, Kamal goes for treatment, right? Now Lokesh Kanagaraj says that Kamal has died and that Vijay could not take it, and therefore he has become an alcoholic and is crying. But again, given the fact that this film plays with whatever people say, we are not asked to believe in what they say. Is Nasser really telling the truth? Or is he just giving this Pila answer to Malavika Mohanan because she wants an answer and we want an answer? But he's like doing what Vijay actually does, which is basically tell some other film story and wrapping it up and presenting it as Vijay's backstory. I think that's really another amazing thing that Lokesh Kanagaraj has done, which is basically, if you look at Kaidi, and it sentimentalizes the hero so much. It's like, oh, why did he? I mean, imagine how much better the movie would have been had Karthi been allowed to remain a mystery. But no, now he's actually a good guy because he's like, he's got this daughter, he's got his wife, and she was killed that way, and that is why he went to jail. I mean, they took her away and all that kind of thing. Why do we need to do that, right? After all these things, why can't a pure genre film be a pure genre film? Now, a lot of people say that you have to do those things because otherwise the Tamil audience won't, they need the sentimental thing, they need a Jimmy to fall and this and that. Maybe yes, but then here's Lokesh saying that maybe no, maybe in that movie I did that, maybe now I can, now with a much bigger star, he's actually not even giving us a backstory. I mean, except for that one line, what Vijay is basically saying is, he tells Malavika Mohanan, why do you care why I became an alcoholic, right? What is important is why I left alcoholism, and he points to the kids. that's such a brilliant bit of screenwriting, because it's like, who gives a shit about the past, right? Why do you care about backstory anymore? I mean, when will audiences be treated as grown-ups, where we are allowed to accept a character from the point we begin to see him in the film and not expect like tons of expository backstory for him, right? Again, my love for this film is not because it's perfect, right? It's not. There are many problems with it, especially that college half in the first half and all that. But look at what Lokesh has done. That's what's like in a mass film. That's really where I'm getting at when I'm pointing out these scenes. Jayesh Murali asked, do you think directors like Ram Sir can bring out the actor inside these mass heroes? Why? That man is making good movies, individualistic movies outside the system. Why should we drag him inside and make him to a mass movie? And secondly, I don't think any Ram movie so far has given the indication that he's capable of thinking mass. He's a very character-driven director, so I don't think that Ram would fit at all. Whereas Vetrimaran might, because he did that in Asuran, because that was his biggest blockbuster. And for me, that is actually the least interesting Vetrimaran film, because it's the most conventional. But again, from an audience's point of view, because they like that conventional aspect of it, they just, they just go berserk, because they are not treating Vetrimaran like an auteur director, right? For them, it's like, yeah, it's a Vetrimaran film, and as long as he gives me a good film, I'm happy. I don't care about his signatures, what he brings to the table, his complex interweaving narrative. I don't give a shit about all that. Is the film entertaining? Then I like it. Whether it's Vetrimaran or whether it's whoever it is, I don't care, because it's only people like us who think about directors and who care about directors more than we care about actors, that these questions become important. Psycho ABCD asks, don't you think the entire first half was not used well in the second act? For example, wouldn't it have made more sense if JD destroyed Bhavani's lorry business, meat business, and break his empire bit by bit, instead of suddenly including the entire track of Tattoo and all that? The first half was great, but the second half didn't use it to its advantage. I would actually argue the reverse. I found the first half kind of okay, but the second half is where the film really took off for me, because it was very focused. Now you have the observation home, the correction facility, and the people there, and JD and Bhavani. You don't have any extraneous characters at all. So it is like a straight on, like, hero versus villain thing with all these lives, these young lives at stake. So I think actually that made more sense for me. MV Sen Live asks, how do you think it is different from other Vijay movies? Does his character have to rescue everyone to give a speech for the film to work now? But Vijay has always been the rescuer, and Kati rescued the farmers. When has a Vijay film actually done some of the things that I've detailed earlier, like, like not have a heroine, or like using, even in Bigil he saves the women, right? That's the whole story. He's always been a kind of a savior, but it's the little touches that are kind of a thing. See, I think one thing that happened here is that when Lokesh said that this is part my movie and part Vijay movie, I think people thought, he was going to radically transform the mass movie. But I don't think that's possible with just one movie. You have to move your coins slowly, so that maybe you can push this beast, this mass movie, into a kind of a Quentin Tarantino-ish space, where you can kind of play with it in a postmodern way and also kind of tell a story. So, like a Tarantino movie, you can watch a Kill Bill even if you've not seen any of the Asian movies, the Hong Kong movies that this guy is constantly referencing, because it still works like a story, because it has a thing. Can we do that? Can that be possible in the Tamil masala space, mass space? That's the question that really Master is asking, and I think it has succeeded in at least asking that question, which is a big deal, because whether it's an entirely successful movie or not, this is not a movie I think that we should be seeing as, do one time watch, that kind of a thing. Again, I'm not talking about the regular audience. They are not our concern. I'm talking about people who love films like us, people like us who are cinephiles. I think this is the question that we should be asking is, does Master ask the right questions? Does it do the right things? And I think it does. Arun Allen says, I thought Maddie would be suitable for Bhavani with an even more sadistical nature, whereas Vijay's character is a little glorified. I don't think so. I love Madhavan, but I don't see him as Bhavani at all. He's a little urbane, suave, and I don't see him as some guy who was, put in a remand home. I'm not saying he can't play it. I'm just like saying I can't imagine it, because right now, like even in Vikram Veda, the character that he plays is sadistical in a very, like, an urban way, right? It's like a Hollywoodish kind of way. Whereas this guy is thorough local, if you want to use that phrase, and I think that's what's interesting about Vijay Sethupathi in this role. Silent Master asks, which scenes did you think Lokesh could have avoided in the film, and which frames of the film were interesting to you? I think second half I don't have any major issues with. I think that was pretty much like what I wanted it to be. I think the first half, though, that whole college scenario with all the students that we rarely see in the second half, I'm like, what is the reason for that? I mean, like that really kept bothering me, and I was wondering why can't we just kind of launch into the reform, the correction home, because that's what happens at Namavar, right? Because Kamal comes, there's a problematic school, he starts setting about cleaning up the place right away. Here, it's like by the time we get to that point, there's a large chunk of the screenplay that's happening, and I'm like, what is the reason for that? Divagaran says, despite being a slightly made Vijay film and a different character traits that we want Vijay to be like, do you think it was written in the same template of the usual Vijay films? Careless guy awakened by emotional trauma like in Jilla Bhairava and some other films. Yes, because that the word that you use is perfect. Template. That is what is important here. See, you cannot overnight change the template of these movies. But for me, more than careless guy, he's an alcoholic. He's like, he doesn't give a like a shit about anything, right? It's like that's what he is. See, a Vijay film is tailored for kids, right? Family audiences, and especially kids. Like even in that early scene where he's sitting, at that award function or alumni meet or whatever it is, that where Andrea is sitting next to him and saying your boots are not matching. I think it's an alumni function, and even that, you see Vijay trying to like looking, and then he sees two little girls and they're very sweet, and I'm sure the audience is like, oh wow, so sweet. But then he fails to put the chiclet into his mouth, and he's like he's a like a loser almost. And the more like important thing is that he fails to save two little boys, which is such a thing, because it's like when you have kids in a Vijay film and and he doesn't, you think that something will happen where they'll save in the last minute, something will happen with that kind of a thing. Because in Bigil, it's the dad who dies, right? Old people, you don't really generally care about. You might feel emotional, but Vijay failing to save this child, and then Vijay using a child, or rather a child saving the heroine in the second half. These are all things that kind of majorly, for me, I don't say they transcend the template. I would say they bring new flavors to the template, and I think that's definitely worthwhile. Harish Krishnan asks, were you disappointed that there are no nuances and intricacies in Master's screenplay, which was abundantly present in his previous works? By the way, what is your view on not giving the protagonist a backstory? Okay, that I've discussed. No, as I've said, there are many nuances in the screenplay that kind of a thing. See, I think you have to look at the screenplay in two ways. One is the the overall narrative arc that doesn't change. That's still hero versus villain, right? That doesn't change. The second way to look at it is as scene by scene what is done. What are the changes or little flavors that you're bringing into it? And I think there's a lot that's happening in this movie that you haven't seen in earlier Vijay films. I would say that Master's screenplay is actually much more of Lokesh Kanagaraj screenplay than Kaidi, which kind of pretty much like establishes the whole thing in the first half and then says, this is all the emotional information you're going to get, and from now on it's just one set piece, next set piece, next set piece, next set piece. In fact, I have the feeling that Kaidi was tailored to certain star considerations more than Master was to Vijay's star considerations, because I think, for instance, that George Miriam character in Kaidi, I don't think he was used as much as he could have been used, right? It's like a thing. Whereas look at Undial, the way he's used here. He's not just this cute kid, right? I mean, like, or this helpless kid. He instigates reason for the kabaddi match. He kind of, saves the heroine. He does so many things in this movie, which I think that George Miriam character should have done in Kaidi. But whereas now he's just this kind of helpless guy who's kind of, doing all things and waiting for the savior to come at the end. Undial saves the day. And I think that's what's really important here when you look at the screenplay is like, yes, overall, maybe there's not that much sense of difference, but these individual things, there are far more Lokesh Kanagaraji things that are happening in Master than in Kaidi. Kondeti Manideep says, he gives a long question, and I'm just going to read the last part, which is that, what's the point? Murugadas would have made this film and it would have been just fine. Nope, I do not think so at all. I do not think that would have happened at all. Now, Steeren has this problem about, this I am waiting line, and to breaking the fourth wall. And he's saying, do you think Lokesh could have placed organic mass moments through better writing, which is more rooted to the story? But why? Part of this whole mass experience is breaking the fourth wall, right? We of hearing characters talk to the audience beyond everything. We've seen Amitabh Bachchan do it. We've seen Rajnikant do it. It's part of the whole experience. These are not dramatic screenplays where you are confined within the four sides of the screen. These are like three-dimensional things where the actor, the audience, everyone's like kind of involved in it. So I have no problem with it at all. Kumar and SK97 asks, one of my favorite things about this movie, do you think our mass heroes just started to let go of the alpha male characters and started doing characters with flaws and doing just what the story needs? The master maybe didn't do that fully. It maybe many of comes. Yeah, I think that's amazing, because one of the, like I said, Asuran, I don't think it's a great Vetrimaran movie, even though it was his greatest success. But one of the most interesting things about the movie is Dhanush is not only playing an old, haggard kind of character with unkempt kind of character, but he's an alcoholic. I think that's majorly a part of what will drive this change. It's like when these guys, when these big stars stop saying things like family audience, you make your family audience movies by all means, let that, but don't ignore that you can also play flawed characters. And I think that's where the seeds for change really lie. Because if there is going to be change, actually I don't even know if in a way the change that I'm expecting in these mass movies, whether it's even a proper thing, because we are now at an era that is so unpredictable, because we don't know who the future stars are. We don't know if theaters are going to, that the cult of a theater creating a star, a theater opening creating a star, I think we've already reached the end of it. I think Vijay and Ajit are the two last of the kind of stars that became those kinds of stars because of theater fandom and things like that. I don't think from now on, that kind of the creation of stardom, maybe somebody who's already existing now might become a bigger star, but that creating a star through theatrical, I don't think that's going to happen anymore. So because OTT has come and it's going to alter a lot of how people see things, because we're seeing them offer packages for very very minimal rates that even like people who usually the lower middle class, and it's not just an elite thing anymore. So I really do think stardom is going to undergo a sea change, and I do think that is also why somebody like Vijay wants to do this movie, because he's like, okay, my old tricks, they're probably not going to work anymore, but maybe I can get someone who can package my old tricks into a new kind of form where I just move this enough, right? Like I kind of move the needle a little, and let's see if that works, because then maybe the next movie I'll abandon some more of the old tricks and go a little further. And then maybe like we'll get this Vijay movie where he's totally unlike any Vijay movie. But I don't know if that will happen with the star, because one of the things about a star as opposed to an actor is that we respond to like certain things, like Rajini doing this or whatever it is. It's like there are certain joys that we get out of a star being a star, and when they abandon that totally and become an actor, I don't know if that's going to fully satisfy us. And in fact, the mixed reactions to Master kind of do show that, right? Babu Salam 37 asks why that 50% Lokesh. I think this is based on the fact that Lokesh said it's 50% my film and 50% Vijay's film. Even GVM directed Ajit's Yenne Arindal with full freedom. Even Karthi is a big star and he gave full freedom to Lokesh, and the film was also blockbuster. I don't know how much freedom Karthi gave versus, I don't know how the screenplay worked. But for me, like I said earlier, the fact that Karti's character needed a backstory for us to feel for him, whereas Vijay's character doesn't, is a big step forward for Lokesh, right? We don't have to be manipulated into feeling for Vijay, whereas there we were manipulated into feeling for Karthi. Not that manipulation is a bad thing, but in a genre film, if you're going to use that same thing over and over and over again, when do you break free of those cliches, right? That's what he's trying to do here. It's not a 100% perfect film, but you have those cliches, at least some of those cliches being broken. As for Gautam and Ajit in Yene Ridal, yes, I agree that was again a part, like to a large extent, that had a directorial signature, because you had the heroine killed off. The major emotional bond of that movie is that between a father and his young daughter, the cop movie. But I still think that towards the end, with all that organ trading and all that, it still became an action movie with the sensibilities of Gotham. Whereas here you're seeing that kind of a thing. But you're right. It's only when these directors come in collision with these stars that we start seeing, because again, flaws and all, Yene Arindal is still Gautamish for us to know that yes, there is this director happening here, as opposed to just get some director, because anyway nobody cares about a Vijay movie. They just want to see his face, they want to see him dance, they want to see him have a good song, whatever. It's not that. It's a written film. You can feel that in Master as well. There is writing here. There are things here that can happen only when a certain kind of screenwriting sensibility is there. Ramesh Sai asked this question about why we need this interval, and his precise words are, and this interval shit happens only in Indian films. Yeah, it does. It's about Indian theaters and their need to sell popcorn and other things, because we are trained to come out during the interval and buy all these things, take a loo break, whatever it is. I would ideally love this tradition to go away, because there are some movies where the interval block itself is beautifully constructed, and even here I really love the way that the two parallels were happening, in the sense that, and I think I would have enjoyed it only in the theater and not in OTT. So Vijay is in jail, and Vijay Sethupathi is going to meet the politicians, right? Outside Vijay's jail, the cops who are outside, because they think they sent some people to beat him up, they look up at the sky and there's thunder and lightning and all that, whatever. And you see the similar effect on the Vijay Sethupathi side. So you hear the thunder and lightning in Vijay's track, and it's intercut with Vijay Sethupath's track, where when the rain falls, it actually begins to fall in the Vijay Sethupathi track. So that continuity that you see in that whole scene building, Vijay Sethupathi, Vijay Sethupathi, Vijay Sethupathi, and then both the tracks explode in violence, and then one guy is like fully wet and he's making this call saying I'm waiting, and the other guy is saying, I don't know who you are, I've not seen your face. I think that kind of excitement building can happen with an interval block only in a theater. But that said, I don't want this in all movies. And if a movie, I mean, like, there are so many movies where you just feel that artificial excitement building, and I don't want that at all. Sooryan Saho says, can a top hero movie be made without a heroine character being unnecessarily weaved into the story? Somehow Lokesh had his hands tied and whatever. Yeah, I really felt he had his hands tied, because, I was kind of hoping that he would do something interesting here, because this is actually the first heroine that he's written, because even the Regina Cassandra character in Managaram is more like a part of an ensemble. She's not really the heroine. So I was like looking forward to what Lokesh would do with this, and I was like a little disappointed, because that woman, she's written conceptually well, as in, why is she there, why is she why does this NGO worker go to the college, and how does she land up here? And drops are like you have like little kids saying Charu Akka even before we learn about the actual connection between Charu and things. So those are really, really nice things that are happening here. But the Charu character itself is like, I don't know, could Andrea have done that? I don't know. I just keep thinking about, what if Andrea had been expanded to play the Charu role as well? Like, I don't know. It's like, I mean, right, not in this form, obviously, but maybe something else. Because you feel that she's there, but she's not really there. She's like, she creates an important moment for the transformation, but she's otherwise so like random that you feel that it's not there. But that said, I was glad that there was no romantic song, that Oru Kanna Pathale, which I love this Anirudh song. It's just so great. That song, I love the fact that it was her singing, like thinking about him rather than him. He's like playing carom with the boys, and he's like, I don't even, I'm not even like looking at you in a romantic way, but then she's the one who's kind of giving him the looks, and that's kind of nice. So I don't think you can compare this to Ajit in Nerkonda Parve, because there you're actually seeing Ajit play a lawyer, a different kind of mass. That's not this kind of mass movie at all. So I don't think you can compare that. But that said, NGK had that's another very interesting example of a star combining with a very idiosyncratic director to create a kind of a political drama. But again, I would not say that that's a mass movie, because that's more like a drama than this kind of a movie. But I think you have that unnecessary Rakul duet and all these things, and I think that time could have been used to create a little more tension in the remaining portions of the scenes. But then, again, see, one thing to remember for those of us who like this masala mode of filmmaking, this mass mode of filmmaking, the star mode of filmmaking, is that we are now finally at a place of baby steps, right? We are not in the Sridhar era where he would do an Urimai Kural with no Sridharism at all. You can still see Selva in NGK. You can still see Gautam in Yenaya Arindal. You can still see Lokesh in Master. I think these are the baby steps, and whether these baby steps will happen only occasionally when like random directors come, or will it happen now consistently, because now we are going to see a young generation say, I don't want to play by your rules. If you want to play by my rules, you come to my movie. I will still try and like balance both, but I will not do it entirely your way. And I think when that happens, I think that's really what's interesting. Srijit Mullapalli asks, Vijay takes off his shirt in Master and goes half bare. Has it ever happened at all? I believe I'm the biggest Vijay fan, but I cannot remember him doing that. I can't remember that either. I don't know. I mean, in the odd scene maybe, but as a like a throughout a stretch, like in a fight or something like that, I can't remember. Others0801 says the lorry sequence, especially Andrea's part, is awesome. What is your take on this? Do you think Andrea's character should have been given more importance? I think that lorry fight is a great idea because you've already established the fact that the Vijay Sethupathi character runs a lorry business. So for him, for the fight sequence to actually feature lorries is a good writing decision. See, again, all these things, when I say these are, we should already have crossed the stage some 15 years back where a fight actually finds its roots in a character and what he does and all those kinds of things. But the fact that we're praising all this now shows that how little the mass movie has progressed over these years, right? But that said, what is your take on the Andrea character? I would say that in this particular point, I wanted more. I wanted to feel the anger of this widow, and she's letting loose her special weapon, which Lokesh clearly likes, with like the Gatling gun in Kaidi. You have this archery thing happening here, but you don't feel much for her because her husband was pretty much a non-existent entity. You don't even know who the guy is, and okay, yeah, in a generic sense, yeah, something happened to her, but you don't feel that rage that happens. And whether it's a mass film or masala film or a drama or whatever it is, the emotions really hook us on to what a character is doing. And here I didn't feel I like the idea of Andrea being part of Vijay's fight, because when was the last time you actually saw a Vijay film in which a woman had a part of an action sequence, right? But the idea is great, but because we don't feel anything for Andrea at that point, the fight comes off as at least her part of that fight comes off as less than important. Vikram Kumar says, I think this is a very different genre for Vijay. The surprising fact is the second half completely being shot in juvenile prison. Everything was refreshing in the movie except for the pace and a few scenes, I guess. But maybe the masses don't change their stereotype. Yeah, see, that's what I'm saying. No, see, it's like this is a movie that we have to recognize for what it does. Does it do them absolutely perfectly? No, but then you there are so many things here that are there to appreciate, that you just feel that people just saying illa bore adikudhu or something like that, or it's too long or whatever. Yes, it is long, but haven't we ever enjoyed films with a few flaws like earlier? I mean, see, the thing with always for me is every film has flaws. Do the flaws overtake the good points, or do the good points overtake the flaws? So, and for me, Master is the latter, because the good points definitely overtake the flaws. Syed Ibrahim says Lokesh shows some typical mass movement build-ups and try to execute in a different way and sometimes even mock them. How do you think this movie is different from other movies where young directors collaborated with big stars like Kala, Pete? And unpopular opinion, I like this movie more than Kaidi just for the reason what he tried to achieve. It's not an unpopular opinion. You've got at least one more supporter. I love this movie much more than I loved Kaidi. And see, with Kala, Rajni was doing what Ranjit wanted, Kala and Kabali. So I don't think you would call them typical, Rajnikant movies. Whereas Master is a Vijay movie. I mean, it's not a non-Vijay movie at all. It's not like suddenly you're seeing him enter politics or political dialogues like that. But what I mean is like in Kala, the whole point is the Dalit politics and all that. That's not happening here. It's not like you're suddenly being thrust into a zone where you've never actually gone. That's not happening here. This is a regular Vijay movie, but done with a director's sensibility. And I think that's what's interesting about it. Thunder Elite asks, why are the reviews only portraying the negative points, and why doesn't anyone appreciate the fact that Vijay had given more screenplays to other actors than his previous films? I enjoyed Master more than Mersal Bigil or Sarkar. Exactly, because this has to be considered, these beasts have to be considered as unique things and not like every other kind of film, right? It's like, because whether when you're talking about a star of the magnitude of Vijay, it's not easy to make a film where overnight you transform the whole damn thing. You can't do that. You have to kind of, do it in small steps. And I think all the little things that I pointed out, and I have like many more such things to point out, but I think I'm already reaching the 1 hour mark, so I can't like talk more. But and all of these is important in noting why Master is the most interesting Vijay movie ever. Not in terms of, I'm not talking again about audience enjoyment or whatever, but I'm just talking about in terms of the cinephile experience of an experience like this, what we take away from it, what it teaches future screenwriters about what they can and cannot do about a big star and a big mass movie. For Vijay to allow himself to be subjected to this experiment, even though that might be too big a word for what happened in Master, is itself a big thing for me. Aditya Vijay says, I see a lot of your interviews and others where directors, including Lokesh, talk about positive response from audience being their ultimate goal. They seem to be immensely satisfied with the idea of receiving an applause for a good scene. I understand this is an art cinema, but the idea of directors making movies to solely gratify the audience with clap-worthy moments is disconcerting. Why don't our directors talk about making movies that are born out of deeper explorations and self-reflections? That's a good question, but it's also a reflection of our cinema. See, we are just now evolving into a culture where we're actually talking about cinema as an art form and not just as I went and had a good time, entertainment kind of a thing. And even that's a very, very small population. So I think overnight we cannot expect directors to not want, because the thing is, this is an expensive art form. What Lokesh does here is going to drive his future films only if the audiences come and watch his film, right? If the film flops, then everybody's going to say, oh my god, Lokesh, don't take any risk again, right? So I think the audience buy-in is very important for these films, as opposed to making a Managaram, because even in a Managaram you do see audiences buying in, and the reason a Lokesh is even being talked about today is because that relatively arty kind of film. See, we're existing in a culture where a Managaram is considered an arty kind of film. It's actually a very, very solid put together thriller, but in our culture, it's considered a niche film, a multiplex film, BC Laoda. That's the culture we are in. So to not expect audiences, or to not keep the audiences in mind and suddenly become this, I'm going to be like this artistic exploration guy, I don't think that's going to happen. Pranav Venuprasad asks, Master got a lot of things right, starting from a well-written villain and a grounded screenplay, and it got rid of the usual tropes like an annoying comedy track, post-interval flashback, unnecessary melodrama, random organic farmer gyan. But why does it feel underwhelming? I think that's again because, like I said earlier, baby steps, right? It's like, it's how, when you have a very strong directorial personality and when you also have a strong star signature, when the two clash, I feel that maybe that's what's making the movie feel a little undercooked or underwhelming or whatever you want to call it, is the fact that this is not, that 50-50 nature of the film's collaboration is still coming through, that it's not like 100% one film or 100% other film. But I will still take this 50-50 because it is at least a sign that something interesting to happen. I mean, like, in a normal Vijay movie, you can't have an AskBR that's like gone on for so long, because it's like the people will ask, oh, did you like this better than that? Was the song fun? What would you do? I mean, you can't talk about like those films as much as here, right? Whereas here, when you look at this film or when you look at an NGK, all these so-called not entirely perfect films, but there are still such interesting things to talk about that you just feel, wow, I would rather have more flawed films like this, that kind of try and do things, rather than 100% successful films that just keep following the template. So that's the end of this episode of Ask VR. I don't know when we'll meet again, but until then, take care, be safe, and keep watching Film Companion South.